history's most tragic giant. They were giants in every sense, admired, stared at, even worshipped. Anna Haining Bates once stood before Queen Victoria. André the Giant filled stadiums with roaring fans. But behind their towering fame were lives marked by pain, loneliness, and loss. This is the untold story of two extraordinary people who seemed larger than life, but couldn't escape the weight of it. André the Giant. You've probably heard of legends in the world of wrestling: Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, Randy Savage, maybe even Ric Flair. But there was one man who stood above them all, literally and figuratively. André the Giant wasn't just a wrestler, he was a phenomenon. They called him the eighth wonder of the world, and not just as a gimmick. He could drink 156 beers in one night, lift a car off the ground with his bare hands, and draw crowds by the thousands just by showing up. But behind the myth was a man, a real man, who lived in constant pain, struggled to fit into a world built for average-sized people, and quietly carried the burden of being too big for almost everything. A giant is born. André René Roussimoff was born on May 19, 1946, in the small countryside town of Coulommiers, France. His family lived a simple, hard-working life on a farm, never imagining that one of their 5 children would become a global sensation. But from the start, André stood out, literally. He weighed nearly 13 pounds at birth, already bigger than most newborns. As he grew, it became clear that something was different. By age 12, André stood at a staggering 6 feet 3 inches tall, towering over teachers and classmates alike. And this wasn't just a growth spurt, it was the beginning of a lifelong transformation. At 14, when compulsory education ended in France, André left school to work on the family farm. He later took a job at a local factory, doing his part like any other young man in rural France. But his body wasn't done growing. By the time he reached adulthood, André measured an unbelievable 7 feet 4 inches tall and weighed over 500 pounds. He wasn't just tall, he was massive, with hands like catcher's mitts and a voice that rumbled like thunder. Even everyday things like finding clothes or walking through doorways became challenges. When he turned 17 and was summoned for military service, the army quickly realized they weren't equipped to handle someone like André. No uniform fit, no boots came close, and even the bunk beds couldn't support his size. So, in a rare move, the government excused him from service. It was one of the first times André's sheer size bent the rules of the world around him, but it wouldn't be the last. Discovery in Paris? At 18, André left the quiet life of the farm behind and moved to Paris, hoping to find work and maybe a new path. What he found instead was destiny. While working construction jobs to make ends meet, his immense size drew constant attention. None more important than from a local wrestling promoter who took one look at André and saw a gold mine. He convinced the young man to step into the ring, not just as a novelty, but as a spectacle. That's when André adopted the name Géant Ferré, based on a mythical French giant from folklore. It wasn't long before André was traveling across Europe, wrestling in packed halls and sports arenas in Germany, the United Kingdom, and eventually Japan and Canada. In every country, the reaction was the same. Audiences couldn't believe their eyes. Wrestling promoters began billing him as the Roussimoff Monster, and he delivered on that title, tossing opponents like rag dolls and drawing standing ovations everywhere he went. But André wasn't just big, he was quick on his feet, shockingly agile for a man of his size. In the ring, he moved with purpose and surprising grace, giving performances that blurred the line between strength and showmanship. Though he was still years away from becoming a household name, the groundwork was being laid. What started as a way to make money turned into a career that would soon take him to North America and into the history books. Becoming André the Giant. Everything changed for André in 1971 when he met Vince McMahon Sr., the powerful promoter behind the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, what we now know as WWE. McMahon instantly recognized André's potential, but he also saw a need for reinvention. Up to that point, André had been marketed as a novelty, a giant sideshow attraction. But McMahon had a bigger vision. He advised André to slow down his wrestling style, to move deliberately to become not just a big man, but a living myth. And with that shift came a new name, André the Giant. It was simple, it was powerful, and it stuck. From that point on, the name André the Giant wasn't just a wrestling persona, it was a brand, a legend in the making. As his star rose, so did the demands on his body. Around this time, André was diagnosed with a rare condition called acromegaly, caused by an overactive pituitary gland that floods the body with growth hormone. It explained everything, his enormous hands, his deep voice, his towering frame. But it also came with a dark side, chronic pain, joint issues, and a shortened life expectancy. For André, the very thing that made him famous was also slowly wearing him down. Still, none of that slowed him yet. André embraced the spotlight. He didn't need a championship belt to prove his worth. His presence alone filled arenas. While other wrestlers built their reputation by winning titles, André didn't need them. He was the main event just by walking into the room. Everywhere he went, fans stood in awe. André the Giant wasn't just a wrestler anymore, he was a phenomenon, a walking wonder, and the face of a new era in professional wrestling. Life on the road, a giant's daily struggles. As André's fame exploded, so did his travel schedule. Back in the 1970s and 80s, professional wrestling wasn't the global empire it is today. It was regional, divided into territories, each with its own fan base and television broadcast. That worked in André's favor. Because there was no internet and limited national coverage, most people only saw him once. When André arrived in a new city, it felt like a once-in-a-lifetime event. Promoters booked him as a special attraction, someone who could fill an arena simply by stepping into the ring. But behind the curtain, André's life on the road was grueling. Airplanes, for example, were a nightmare. André couldn't fit into a standard seat, so he was forced to book 2 first-class tickets just to have enough space. Even then, his knees pressed into the seat in front of him, and using the airplane bathroom? Nearly impossible. Hotel beds were too short, showers too cramped, and toilets too fragile for his size. The world simply wasn't built for someone like André. And then there were the taxis, especially in Japan. André was so enormous that drivers were genuinely afraid of him. One time, he had to hide around the corner while another wrestler flagged down a cab. But when André stepped out to get in, the driver saw him, screamed, "No, no, no," and hit the gas. Without flinching, André calmly reached out and grabbed the rear bumper, holding the car in place like it was nothing. The driver wasn't going anywhere until André let go. That story became legend among wrestlers. For most people, travel meant freedom. For André, it was a constant reminder of just how different and how difficult his life really was. Strength, respect, and a few broken ribs. In the world of wrestling, matches may be scripted, but André's strength was anything but pretend. Inside the ring, he didn't just perform, he commanded respect. And while most wrestlers played by the rules, everyone knew that if André didn't like you, he could make your night very real very quickly. He had a gentle nature, yes, but cross him, and you'd feel the full force of the giant. There's a famous story involving real-life boxer Chuck Wepner, the same man who inspired Rocky. In a special match, Wepner threw legitimate punches, but they barely fazed André. Finally, when André had enough, he scooped the heavyweight boxer up like a sack of laundry and tossed him over the ropes as if he were made of paper. The crowd roared, but that was no show. That was pure strength. And then there's the barroom story. André was having a quiet drink when a local tough guy decided to pick a fight. André tried to brush him off, even offering to buy the man a drink, but the guy wouldn't back down. Finally, without losing his cool, André stood up, lifted the man clear off the ground, and flung him across the room. The guy landed hard, broken ribs and all. The greatest drinker who ever lived. If André's strength made him a legend, his drinking made him a myth. Nearly every wrestler who traveled with him has a story, And they all sound too wild to be true. But the truth is, André the Giant could drink like no one else on Earth. It wasn't just a party trick, it was part of his routine, his way of coping, and maybe a bit of both. He reportedly consumed around 7,000 calories of alcohol a day. To stay warm in colder climates, he'd casually sip 2 bottles of vodka, like someone else might have a cup of tea. One night at the Tampa Airport's Delta Lounge, André sat down and drank 108 beers in a single sitting. Let that sink in. 108. That's more than 4 cases. For most people, that's fatal. For André, it was just Thursday. It didn't stop there. During a hotel stay in England, he racked up a $40,000 bar tab over the course of a month. On a trip to Japan, he polished off 12 bottles of French wine in 3 hours. And on a flight from Chicago to Tokyo, sitting next to Ric Flair, André drank every last bottle of vodka on the plane. On another trip, this one from Miami to Dayton, he and Hillbilly Jim went through 56 mini vodka bottles. André drank 50 of them. Before stepping into the ring, his pre-match ritual was equally astonishing. 6 bottles of Portuguese wine. Just to loosen up. One night, for his final round, André calmly ordered 40 shots of vodka, and the bartender stayed late to pour every last one. It was entertaining, sure, but underneath the laughs and disbelief, you could see the truth. André was drinking not just for fun, but to dull the pain that came with being a living giant in a world too small to hold him. Pain behind the fame. For all his strength, André lived in near constant pain. His condition, acromegaly, didn't just make him grow, it wore his body down from the inside out. By the time he was in his 30s, every movement was a struggle. His back ached, his knees throbbed. Even getting out of bed in the morning took effort, but André wasn't one to complain. He kept it to himself, smiled for the fans, and did the job. Still, the pain was real, and it was relentless. While filming The Princess Bride, a movie that introduced him to an entirely new generation, André's back was in such bad shape that he couldn't even hold his co-star Robin Wright, who weighed barely 110 pounds. For a key scene, a hidden rig had to be used just to make it look like she was in his arms. That's how much pain he was in. And in the ring, the giant who once moved with surprising speed and agility now appeared slower, more deliberate. The spark was still there, but his body was fading. His legendary match with Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 3 wasn't just a scripted passing of the torch. It was a real turning point, the beginning of the end for a man whose body had carried the weight of greatness for far too long. A gentle goodbye. In January 1993, André returned to France to attend his father's funeral. It was a somber trip, one that brought him back to the countryside where his story had begun. While staying in a Paris hotel, André passed away in his sleep. He was just 46 years old. The official cause of death was congestive heart failure. His massive heart, quite literally, could no longer keep up. The wrestling world was stunned but not surprised. Everyone knew André had been in pain. What many didn't realize was just how much he had quietly endured. Soon after, the WWE created its Hall of Fame, and André the Giant was the very first person to be inducted. What's your favorite memory of André the Giant? Were you lucky enough to see him live, or do you remember the first time you watched him on screen? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear them. Anna Haining Bates. She was one of the tallest women to ever walk the earth. So tall, in fact, that strangers stopped in their tracks. Children stared wide-eyed, and newspapers dubbed her the largest woman in the world. A giant child in a small world? Anna Haining Bates was born on August 6, 1846, in the quiet village of Millbrook, Nova Scotia. Her parents, Anne Graham and Alexander Swan, were Scottish immigrants trying to build a better life in the Canadian countryside. They had 12 other children, all perfectly average in size and stature. But Anna was different from the very beginning. Some say she was born an average baby. Others claim she weighed an astonishing 13 pounds at birth. Either way, it didn't take long for everyone to notice she wasn't like the others. By the time Anna was just 4 years old, she stood over 4 feet tall and weighed more than 90 pounds. And she didn't stop growing. At 15, she measured a staggering 7 feet tall. But Anna's size wasn't just a passing phase. She continued to grow beyond that, eventually reaching over 7.5 feet tall, making her one of the tallest women in recorded history. Although there was no formal diagnosis in her lifetime, we now know Anna most likely had gigantism, a rare condition caused by a tumor on the pituitary gland. This led to the overproduction of growth hormone, which explained her remarkable size, and the many health problems that came with it. She lived with constant strain on her joints, organs, and bones. And although the condition often shortens lifespans, Anna faced her challenges with a strength and gentleness that left a lasting impression on everyone she met. While the world saw her as a spectacle, her family saw her as a daughter and sister. Her father built her a custom bed and specially made school furniture. They did what they could to make her feel included in a world that wasn't built for her. But even their love couldn't shield her from what was coming next. Turned into a public attraction. As Anna's height continued to climb, so did public curiosity. Word spread quickly across Nova Scotia about the infant giantess, and before long people began showing up at the Bates family farm, just to catch a glimpse of her. Local newspapers ran stories about the remarkable young girl who towered over her peers. Some were respectful, others sensationalized her. But all of it made one thing clear. The public fascination with Anna wasn't going away. The Bates family, while deeply loving and protective, faced a difficult reality. Life on the farm wasn't easy, and Anna's size came with extra costs. Custom clothing, special shoes, and daily challenges that required creative solutions. So, out of both necessity and practicality, her parents made a hard decision. They began to take Anna to local fairs and exhibitions. There, she was shown to the public as a curiosity, an astonishing sight, a giantess from the Maritimes. It's a decision that sparked debate ever since. Some historians have criticized it as exploitative, while others see it as the only viable way for the family to support Anna and manage the financial burden her condition brought. But there's something important to remember. Anna was never left to fend for herself. Her parents accompanied her everywhere. They chose events carefully, staying away from anything shady or inappropriate. Wherever Anna went, her family was right there beside her, watching, guiding, and protecting. And through it all, Anna maintained a quiet grace. Even as people stared or whispered, she tried her best to smile, to answer questions kindly, and to carry herself with dignity. She was becoming more than a sideshow attraction. She was beginning to find her voice, even if the world hadn't learned to truly hear her yet. A dream dashed, and a new path forward. Despite the crowds and the curiosity, Anna longed for something simple, something most people take for granted. She wanted to live a normal life. She doted on her younger siblings, helped with chores, and spent her free time reading and drawing. More than anything, Anna dreamed of becoming a teacher. She loved books, loved learning, and hoped one day to stand in front of a classroom, not as an object of fascination, but as a mentor. She even took a bold step toward that dream. As a teenager, she moved to another city to live with her aunt and attend school. But the dream didn't last. The classrooms were too cramped. The desks were impossible for her to use. Worse still were the stares and whispers from strangers on the streets, curious looks that made her feel like she didn't belong. Despite her determination, the message was clear. The world wasn't ready to accommodate a woman like Anna. It was a crushing blow, but she wasn't alone. One of her greatest sources of strength was her grandmother, a proud Highland Scot, who saw something powerful in her granddaughter. "Stand tall and be proud of your Highland ancestry," she told Anna. And somehow those words took root. They reminded Anna that her size wasn't a flaw, it was part of who she was. A blessing, a responsibility, a way to stand tall in more ways than one. With renewed strength, Anna began to look at her life differently. If she couldn't teach in a classroom, maybe she could educate people in other ways. If the world wouldn't stop staring, maybe she could give them something meaningful to look at. That shift in perspective would take her far from Nova Scotia and straight into the spotlight of one of the most famous showmen in history. The Nova Scotian giantess takes the stage. In 1862, Anna made a bold move. At just 16, she crossed the border into the United States to join P.T. Barnum's famed American Museum in New York City. There, she was billed as the Nova Scotian Giantess. An astonishing sight, to be sure, but Anna wasn't content to just be stared at. She saw the opportunity for what it really was, a platform, a chance to earn money, receive an education, and take back control of her story. And to Barnum's credit, the arrangement was surprisingly fair. Anna earned $23 a week in gold, a generous sum for the time, and she had a personal chaperone to ensure her safety. Even more impressively, she was allowed to sell photographs of herself and keep the profits. In a time when most women had little financial independence, Anna had carved out a rare space for herself, both as a professional and as a person. While working at the museum, Anna thrived. She received private tutoring, learned to play piano, improved her singing voice, and even took on dramatic roles on stage. She portrayed characters like Lady Macbeth, not just for spectacle, but with real performance skill. She also began holding question and answer sessions with museum audiences, sharing her life, her thoughts, and her humanity with those who came just to gawk. In doing so, she began to turn the tables. She wasn't just an exhibit anymore, she was a storyteller, a presence, a teacher in her own right. But in 1865, disaster struck. A massive fire engulfed Barnum's museum. Anna, weighing nearly 400 pounds and too tall for the windows, was trapped as the flames rose around her. With no escape route, panic set in, until 18 people working together carried her to safety. She was the last to make it out. She lost everything she owned, but she didn't leave until others had escaped first. In that moment, she wasn't just the Nova Scotian giantess, she was a hero. Royalty, romance, and recognition. Anna's fame didn't stop with stage performances. Her grace, intelligence, and quiet charm caught the attention of people far beyond the world of show business, including royalty. During her travels through Europe, Anna formed an unlikely and heartfelt friendship with none other than Queen Victoria herself. The Queen, known for her interest in people who defied societal norms, found in Anna a kindred spirit, someone dignified, intelligent, and completely unforgettable. But that wasn't the only life-changing connection Anna would make. While visiting a circus in Halifax, she met Martin Van Buren Bates, a fellow giant who stood over 7 feet tall and weighed nearly 500 pounds. It was quite literally a meeting of equals. They understood each other in a way no one else could, sharing not only a profession but the daily challenges of living in a world not built for people their size. Their connection was instant, and their bond only deepened as they began touring together. In 1871, Anna and Martin were married in London, and their wedding quickly became international news. When Queen Victoria heard the news, she sent the couple an extraordinary gift: a custom-made wedding gown created from 100 meters of satin and 50 meters of lace, embroidered with orange blossoms. And that was just the beginning. The couple was invited to Buckingham Palace, where the Queen personally gifted Anna a beautiful diamond ring and presented Martin with a gold watch and chain. They would go on to visit the palace at least 2 more times, cementing their place in the Queen's circle of admired guests. After their wedding tour, the couple settled in Seville, Ohio, where they designed a home to suit their unique proportions: tall ceilings, wide doorways, and massive beds. But they didn't forget others. The back portion of the house was built to standard size for guests and servants, a thoughtful touch that showed Anna and Martin's deep kindness and consideration. They tried to live a life of peace and comfort away from the public eye. But as much as Anna had already endured and achieved, the most personal and painful chapter of her life was still to come. Tragedy of motherhood. After years of touring, performing, and living under the public eye, Anna and Martin longed for something far more private and precious, a family of their own. Like so many couples, they dreamed of raising children, of filling their custom-built home with laughter and life. But for Anna, those dreams would end in unimaginable sorrow. In 1872, Anna gave birth to a baby girl. The child weighed an incredible 18 pounds at birth, far larger than most newborns. Sadly, the infant passed away not long after. It was a crushing blow, but Anna, ever resilient, pressed forward. Still, the grief lingered quietly in the background, a wound that had never fully healed. 6 years later, hope returned. Anna was pregnant again, this time with a boy. But from the start, the pregnancy was difficult. She suffered complications, including a massive loss of amniotic fluid. Labor dragged on, grueling and dangerous. When the moment finally came, the attending doctor was faced with an impossible challenge. The baby was simply too large to deliver with forceps. In the end, a risky and painful method was used to bring the child into the world. The baby boy was born weighing 23 pounds, so large he looked like a 6-month-old. It was a medical marvel, and a tragic one. The child lived for just 11 hours before passing away in Anna's arms. Later, he would be recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records as the heaviest baby ever born. For Anna, the loss was unbearable. 2 children, 2 funerals. The weight of that grief was heavier than any burden she had ever carried. She fell into a deep depression, retreating from public life and abandoning her once bright stage career. The world that once stared in awe now watched her disappear from view. She tried briefly to return to the circus, but the joy was gone. The sparkle had dimmed. Anna had faced many challenges in her life: loneliness, stares, physical hardship. But this pain? This was different. It wasn't something she could rise above. It stayed with her, reshaping the rest of her days in quiet, lasting sorrow. A quiet life after the spotlight. After the loss of their son, Anna and Martin turned away from the spotlight for good. The touring days, the public exhibitions, the performances, they all belonged to another life now. In the late 1870s, the couple focused instead on their farm in Seville, Ohio, pouring their time and energy into a quieter, more grounded existence. They became active members of their local Baptist church, where they found comfort in community and faith. Their home, once a place of wonder for curious visitors, became a haven of peace. And while the public's attention may have faded, their kindness never did. Anna and Martin were known throughout their town not just for their size, but for their generosity. One of Anna's greatest joys in this chapter of life was caring for animals. She was deeply compassionate toward creatures large and small. She opposed horse racing, believing it to be cruel, and took in rescued cattle and draft horses that had outlived their usefulness in the circus. She even adopted retired performing animals. One particularly mischievous monkey named Buttons became the subject of local legend for his antics with unsuspecting guests. The end of a remarkable life. In the spring of 1888, just one day before her 42nd birthday, Anna Haining Bates passed away in her sleep. The official cause was heart failure, brought on by complications from tuberculosis and thyroid disease. Conditions made worse by the long-term strain her body had endured. Her life, marked by towering height, immense compassion, and quiet strength, came to a gentle end in the home she had built with Martin. Her death was felt deeply in her community and by all who had known her. Martin, devastated but faithful to her memory, erected a monument at her gravesite. A year later, he remarried and moved to accommodate his new wife. But he made sure that when his own time came, he would be buried beside Anna and their son, forever connected to the love and the life they had shared. Today, Anna is remembered not only for her size, but for her story. In Seville, Ohio, a local museum holds artifacts and memories of her life. And in Halifax, Nova Scotia, a museum dedicated to her legacy is maintained with the help of her descendants. Preserving the journey of a woman who lived through spectacle, survived tragedy, and still managed to inspire those around her. So, what do you take away from Anna's story? Her resilience? Her kindness? Her strength in the face of grief? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear what moved you most. And if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who appreciates real stories about remarkable people. There are more untold legends from the past waiting to be remembered. Thank you for watching Past Not Past, where history isn't forgotten. It's just waiting to be told.